Please, Marcus, just listen to me. Sarah's voice cracked as she pressed herself against the mahogany door of their penthouse apartment. Her ex-boyfriend's face twisted with rage, just inches from her own. Listen to you? After what you did? Marcus's breath reeked of whiskey as he slammed his palm against the door beside her head, making her flinch. You humiliated me in front of my business partners, Sarah. You made me look like a fool. I didn't mean to. You questioned my judgment in front of everyone at dinner, made me look weak. His voice rose to a dangerous level that made Sarah's blood run cold. She'd seen this look before, but never this intense, never this frightening. Before we continue, please go down and hit the subscribe button if you like these stories. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she remembered the dinner party from 2 nights ago. All she'd done was suggest that maybe Marcus shouldn't invest in that questionable real estate deal. She'd been trying to help him, but clearly he saw it as betrayal. Marcus, please, you're scaring me. She tried to edge toward her purse on the console table, her keys somewhere inside. Maybe we should talk about this when you've had some sleep. Don't you dare tell me what I need. He grabbed her wrist, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. You think you're so smart, don't you? Think you know better than me? That's when Sarah knew she had to run. The Marcus she'd fallen in love with 18 months ago was nowhere to be found in this man's eyes. This version of him looked capable of anything. She twisted away from his grip, adrenaline giving her strength she didn't know she possessed. I'm leaving, Marcus. This is over. Like hell you are! He lunged for her, but Sarah was already moving, grabbing her purse and bolting for the door. She flew down the stairs of their building, too terrified to wait for the elevator. Behind her, she could hear Marcus shouting, his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. Her hands shook as she pushed through the lobby doors and stumbled onto the busy Chicago street. The evening air hit her face like a slap, but she didn't stop running. Her heels clicked frantically against the pavement as she glanced over her shoulder. Marcus was gaining on her, his face murderous in the glow of the streetlights. Sarah, get back here right now. His voice carried over the city noise, making several pedestrians turn to stare. She couldn't go to her sister's. He knew that address. She couldn't go to her parents. They were 3 states away. Her best friend Jenny was out of town for work. Sarah felt completely alone, completely trapped, as she realized Marcus was only half a block behind her now. That's when she saw it, a sleek black sedan idling at a red light just ahead. Without thinking, without any plan beyond escape, Sarah yanked open the passenger door and threw herself inside. Drive! Please, just drive! She gasped, not even looking at the person behind the wheel. The car was silent except for her ragged breathing. Slowly, Sarah turned to face the stranger she'd just trapped herself with, praying she hadn't jumped from the frying pan into the fire. The man in the driver's seat was nothing like what she'd expected. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it belonged in a Renaissance painting, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and the most piercing green eyes she'd ever seen. He was wearing an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 3 months, and he was studying her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter despite her terror. Are you going to tell me why you just hijacked my car? His voice was low, cultured, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Italian, maybe? Sarah glanced in the side mirror and saw Marcus standing on the sidewalk, scanning the traffic. Please, there's a man following me. He's dangerous. I just need to get away from here. The stranger followed her gaze to Marcus, his expression never changing. The one in the cheap suit who looks like he wants to put his fist through something? Yes. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Please. Without another word, the man pressed the accelerator, and the sedan glided away from the intersection with the kind of smooth power that spoke of serious money under the hood. Sarah slumped back in the leather seat, relief flooding through her so intensely she felt dizzy. Thank you. Thank you so much. You can drop me anywhere, really. I'll call a cab or... What's your name? He kept his eyes on the road, maneuvering through traffic with practiced ease. Sarah Chen. She studied his profile, noting the expensive watch on his wrist, the way his suit fit perfectly across his broad shoulders. What's yours? There was a pause. Dante. Just Dante. Something about the way he said it made Sarah think that was all the information she was going to get. Well, Dante, I can't thank you enough. I was in real trouble back there. What did you do to make him so angry? The question was casual, but Sarah caught the edge of steel underneath. I questioned his judgment in front of his business associates. Apparently, that was unforgivable. Sarah's laugh was bitter. I thought I was helping him avoid making a mistake. Turns out he saw it as me challenging his authority. Dante's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. Men who need to prove their authority through fear aren't worthy of the title. There was something in his tone that made Sarah look at him more closely. This wasn't just some wealthy businessman who happened to be in the right place at the right time. There was an air of danger about him, carefully contained but unmistakably present. Where are we going? Sarah realized they'd been driving for nearly 20 minutes, and she didn't recognize the neighborhood they were entering. The buildings were taller. Here, more expensive looking. Somewhere safe. Dante pulled into an underground garage beneath a towering glass and steel building. You said he was dangerous. I'm assuming you meant that literally. Sarah nodded, suddenly feeling foolish. She'd escaped one potentially dangerous situation by throwing herself headlong into another. What did she really know about this man? As if reading her thoughts, Dante turned to face her fully for the first time since she'd jumped into his car. I'm not going to hurt you, Sarah, but I am going to make sure that man never gets the chance to hurt you either. The way he said it sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. There was promise in his voice, but also something darker. Something that suggested Dante was very familiar with handling problems that involved dangerous men. I should probably just go to the police, Sarah said, though even as she spoke, she knew how that would go. Marcus hadn't actually hit her. He'd grabbed her wrist, but the marks were already fading. It would be her word against his, and Marcus had connections, money, influence. The police. Dante's smile was sharp around the edges. Yes, I'm sure they'll be very helpful. Tell me, what does your Marcus do for a living? He's in real estate development, commercial properties mostly. Sarah frowned. Why? Instead of answering, Dante got out of the car and walked around to open her door. The gesture was old-fashioned, courtly, but Sarah noticed how his eyes swept the garage as he did it, checking exits, looking for threats. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. Sarah found herself sneaking glances at her mysterious rescuer, trying to figure him out. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, but there was something else underneath. A confidence that came from more than just money. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took Sarah's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline, and the furnishings were the kind of understated luxury that only came from having enough money that you didn't need to show it off. Drink? Dante moved to a bar cart that probably cost more than Sarah's car. I shouldn't. You should. He poured 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive whiskey. You've had a traumatic evening. Sarah accepted the glass, her fingers brushing his as she took it. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she noticed Dante's eyes darken slightly. So, she said, trying to distract herself from the way her pulse had quickened. What do you do, Dante, besides rescuing damsels in distress? I solve problems. He settled into the chair across from her, his long legs stretched out casually, but Sarah got the impression he could spring into action in a heartbeat if needed. That's vague. It's accurate. Sarah took a sip of the whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat. What kind of problems? Dante studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. The kind that the police can't or won't handle. The kind that require a more direct approach. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Are you talking about Marcus? I'm talking about men who think they can intimidate women, who think their money or connections put them above consequences. Dante's voice was deceptively mild, but Sarah could hear the steel underneath. Men who need to be reminded that there's always someone more powerful than they are. Sarah set down her glass with shaking hands. Who are you, really? Before Dante could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Your Marcus is more of a problem than you know, he said, showing her the screen. It was a news article from 6 months ago. Local developer investigated for ties to organized crime. Sarah's blood ran cold. That investigation was dropped. Marcus said it was just business rivals trying to discredit him. The investigation was dropped because key witnesses suddenly became reluctant to testify. That's not the same thing as innocence. Dante pocketed his phone. Your instincts were right to question that real estate deal. It was likely a money laundering operation. Oh, God, Sarah pressed her hands to her face. I was living with him for over a year. How did I not know? Because he didn't want you to know. Men like Marcus are very good at compartmentalizing their lives. Dante moved to sit on the coffee table in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. But now that you've seen behind the mask, he can't let you walk away. You know too much. I don't know anything. I never saw anything illegal. Never. You saw enough to question his judgment. That suggests you might start looking deeper, asking more questions. For a man with his kind of secrets, that's unacceptable. Sarah looked up at Dante, seeing her own fear reflected in his green eyes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like possessiveness. What are you saying? I'm saying he's going to keep coming after you until he's neutralized. Dante reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek. And I'm saying, I'm not going to let that happen. The touch of his fingers against her skin sent electricity shooting through Sarah's entire body. She should be terrified. Of Marcus, of this situation, of Dante himself. But instead, she felt safer than she had in months. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Dante's thumb traced along her jawline, and Sarah's breath caught. Maybe I want to. The air between them crackled with tension. Sarah knew she should step back, should think this through rationally, but rational thought seemed impossible when Dante was looking at her like she was something precious and rare. This is crazy, she breathed. I don't even know your last name. Moretti. The admission seemed to cost him something. Dante Moretti. Sarah's eyes widened. Even she had heard that name whispered in certain circles of Chicago society. The Morettis were old money, old power, and old secrets. You're exactly what you think I am. Dante's hand dropped away from her face, and Sarah immediately missed the contact. Which is why you should probably run. Again. Instead of running, Sarah found herself leaning closer. Are you going to hurt me? Never. The word was a vow, fierce and absolute. Then I'm not running. Something shifted in Dante's expression, something that made Sarah's pulse race for entirely different reasons than fear. Sarah. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. You don't understand what you're saying. Then explain it to me. Before Dante could answer, the elevator chimed, and Sarah jumped. Dante was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between her and whoever was arriving. Expecting company? Sarah's voice was tight with renewed fear. Always. Dante's hand moved to his jacket, and Sarah caught a glimpse of leather, a shoulder holster. But this should be friendly company. A man emerged from the elevator, tall and dark-haired like Dante, but with a harder edge to his features. His eyes swept the room, cataloging threats with military precision before settling on Sarah. This her? He asked Dante. Marco, meet Sarah. Sarah, my brother, Marco. Marco's handshake was firm, but brief. We have a problem. Your boyfriend's been making calls. Sarah's stomach dropped. What kind of calls? The kind where he tells people you stole something from him and need to be found. Marco's expression was grim. He's put a $10,000 bounty on information about your whereabouts. But I didn't steal anything, Sarah turned to Dante, panic rising in her throat. I swear, I never... We know. Dante's voice was calm, controlled. This isn't about theft. It's about control. He's making sure you can't disappear, can't start over somewhere new. What am I supposed to do? I can't go home, can't go to work. You're going to stay here. Dante's tone brooked no argument. Until we handle this. Handle it how? The brothers exchanged a look that made Sarah's blood run cold. You don't need to worry about the details, Marco said. Like hell I don't. This is my life you're talking about. Sarah stood up, pacing to the windows. I can't just hide here forever while you two handle things. What does that even mean? Dante moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. It means you trust us to do what needs to be done. Sarah turned to face him, and the intensity in his green eyes nearly took her breath away. And what if I can't? What if I need to know exactly what you're planning to do to the man I lived with for over a year? Then you'll have to decide what matters more, Dante said softly. Your moral comfort zone, or your life. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Sarah stared at this man who'd rescued her, sheltered her, and was now offering to solve her problems through methods she was afraid to examine too closely. There has to be another way. There is, Marco said from across the room. You can go back to him. Apologize. Promise to be a good girl and never question him again. Maybe he'll only hurt you a little bit, to make his point. Marco, Dante's voice carried a warning. What? She needs to understand what she's dealing with. This isn't some romantic comedy where the bad guy comes to his senses and leaves her alone. Marco's eyes were hard as flint. Men like her, Marcus, don't just give up. They escalate. Sarah sank back into her chair, the weight of her situation finally hitting her full force. She was trapped between a man who wanted to control her and men who solved problems through violence. There was no good choice, no clean solution. I need some air, she whispered. Dante was beside her immediately. The balcony's through here. The night air was cool against Sarah's skin as she stepped outside. The city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling like stars. She gripped the railing, trying to steady herself. I never wanted any of this, she said when Dante joined her. I just wanted a normal life, a normal relationship. Normal is overrated. Dante leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that their arms almost touched. It's also an illusion. There's darkness in everyone, Sarah. The only difference is how well they hide it. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Dante turned to face her. I could lie to you, tell you that everything's going to be fine, that we'll find some peaceful solution that doesn't involve anyone getting hurt. But lies don't help anyone in the long run. Sarah studied his profile in the moonlight. What's your darkness, Dante? He was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I enjoy solving problems too much. When someone threatens something that belongs to me, I don't just want to stop them. I want to destroy them completely. And I belong to you now? Sarah's heart was hammering, though whether from fear or excitement she couldn't tell. Dante's eyes met hers, and the raw hunger she saw there made her knees weak. From the moment you got into my car, you became mine to protect. Whether you belong to me in other ways. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. That's up to you. Sarah knew she should step back. Everything logical in her brain was screaming warnings. But the rest of her, the part that had been starved for real passion in her relationship with Marcus, was drawn to Dante like a moth to flame. This is insane, she breathed. Probably. Dante's hand came up to cup her face, and this time Sarah leaned into the touch. But sanity is overrated too. When his lips met hers, Sarah felt like she was falling off a cliff. The kiss was nothing like Marcus's careful, controlled affection. This was fire, and need, and barely leashed hunger. Dante kissed her like he was claiming her, like he'd been starving for the taste of her. Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, could taste the whiskey on his lips, could lose herself completely in the way he groaned her name against her mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah felt like a different person than the woman who'd jumped into a stranger's car a few hours ago. "Stay with me tonight," Dante said, his forehead resting against hers. "Let me protect you." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She knew she was crossing a line, knew that whatever happened next would change everything. But for the first time in months, she felt truly alive. The next morning, Sarah woke up in a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then it all came flooding back. Marcus, the chase, Dante. She sat up, looking around the guest room Dante had shown her to the night before. Despite the chemistry between them, he'd been a perfect gentleman, giving her space and privacy when she needed it most. The smell of coffee and something delicious drifted from the kitchen, and Sarah realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday, too nervous about Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior to have much appetite. She found Dante at the stove, somehow managing to look devastatingly attractive in jeans and a simple white t-shirt. He glanced up when she entered, and the smile that crossed his face made her stomach flutter. "Good morning. I hope you like pancakes." "You cook?" Sarah couldn't hide her surprise. "I have many talents." The way he said it made heat pool low in Sarah's belly. "Coffee's fresh." Sarah poured herself a cup from the expensive-looking machine, trying to process the domesticity of the scene. Less than 24 hours ago, she'd been living with Marcus. Now she was having breakfast with a man who was basically a stranger, albeit a stranger who made her feel things she'd never experienced before. "Any word on Marcus?" she asked, settling onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. Dante's expression grew serious. "He filed a police report claiming you stole jewelry and cash from his apartment." Sarah's coffee cup clattered against the granite countertop. "What? We know. It's a setup, designed to make you afraid to go to the police about his behavior." Dante flipped the pancakes with more force than necessary. "It also gives him legal justification for tracking you down." "So what do? "We prove he's lying." Marco appeared in the kitchen, looking like he'd been up all night. "And we make sure he knows what happens to men who falsely accuse innocent women." Sarah looked between the two brothers, seeing the family resemblance in their protective fury. "How do we prove he's lying?" "Security cameras," Dante said, setting a plate of perfect pancakes in front of her. "Your building has them, his building has them. We track your movements yesterday, show that you left empty-handed." "Will that be enough?" Marco's smile was sharp as a blade. "It'll be enough to start destroying his credibility. Amazing how quickly legitimate business partners distance themselves when someone becomes a legal liability." Sarah took a bite of the pancakes, which were somehow both fluffy and rich, like everything else in Dante's world. "And then what? I just go back to my normal life like none of this happened?" "What normal life?" Dante asked gently. "He knows where you work, where you live, where you shop. You think he's just going to give up and leave you alone?" The pancakes turned to ash in Sarah's mouth. "So what are you saying? That I can never go home?" Dante sat down across from her, his green eyes serious. "I'm saying maybe it's time to consider what home really means to you." Before Sarah could ask what he meant by that, Dante's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his expression hardened. "What?" His voice was clipped, businesslike. Sarah couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Dante's face grow darker with each passing second. "When?" he asked. "How many?" A pause. "No, don't do anything yet. I'll handle it." He ended the call and looked at Marco. "He's escalating faster than we expected." "What happened?" Sarah's voice came out smaller than she intended. Marcus contacted some mutual acquaintances of ours. He's offering $50,000 for your location. Dante's jaw was tight with barely controlled anger, and he's told them that you witnessed some things you shouldn't have, things that could cause problems for a lot of people. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. But I never saw anything. I swear, Dante, I never. It doesn't matter what you actually saw. What matters is what he's claiming you saw. Marco was already moving toward the door. I'll make some calls. See if we can contain this. After Marco left, the apartment felt too quiet, too charged with tension. Sarah pushed her plate away, her appetite completely gone. $50,000, she said numbly. For me. It's not about the money. Dante moved to stand behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. It's about desperation. He's making moves that will draw attention from people he really doesn't want to notice him. Good attention or bad attention? Dante's laugh was humorless. For Marcus? Definitely bad. The kind of people we know don't like loose cannons. They don't like men who can't control their personal lives, bleeding into business. Sarah turned to face him. The kind of people you know? Dante was quiet for a moment, his hands still on her shoulders. My family has been in Chicago for 4 generations, Sarah. We have interests in various businesses, various sectors, some more legitimate than others. Are you telling me you're... I'm telling you that I have the resources and connections to make sure Marcus never bothers you again. Permanently. The word permanently hung in the air like a threat. Sarah stared at Dante, seeing the man who'd cooked her breakfast and kissed her like she was precious, but also seeing something darker underneath. What does permanently mean? It means you don't have to be afraid anymore. Dante's thumbs rubbed gentle circles on her shoulders. It means you can have the life you want without looking over your shoulder. By doing what to Marcus? Dante was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he wasn't going to answer. When he did, his voice was carefully neutral. By making him understand that the consequences of continuing to pursue you outweigh any benefit he thinks he'll gain. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get. Dante's hands dropped away from her shoulders. Sometimes, Sarah, the less you know about the solution, the better you sleep at night. Sarah stood up, pacing to the windows again. The morning sun made the city look deceptively peaceful, hiding all the darkness and violence that lurked beneath the surface. I can't be responsible for someone getting hurt because of me. You're not responsible for Marcus's choices. He chose to threaten you, to lie about you, to put a bounty on your head. Dante joined her at the window. All you did was try to help him make a better business decision. And look how that turned out. You saw through his facade faster than most people would have. That's not a flaw, Sarah. It's a gift. Dante turned her to face him. Don't let his reaction make you doubt your instincts. Sarah looked up at this man who'd turned her world upside down in less than 24 hours. Everything about the situation was impossible, dangerous, completely insane. But when Dante looked at her like that, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, she felt like she could handle anything. What happens to us? She asked. After you solve the Marcus problem? Dante's expression grew intense, possessive. What do you want to happen? Sarah knew her answer was probably crazy. Knew she was setting herself up for heartbreak or worse. But she also knew that she'd never felt as alive as she did when Dante kissed her. Never felt as protected as she did in his arms. I want to stay, she whispered. I want to see where this goes. Dante's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Then you stay. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Sarah melted into him, letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, jumping into that stranger's car had been the best decision she'd ever made. 3 weeks later, Sarah woke up in Dante's bed, their bed now, to the smell of coffee and the sound of rain against the windows. The Marcus situation had been resolved, as Dante put it, though Sarah had deliberately not asked for details. All she knew was that Marcus had suddenly decided to leave Chicago for an extended business trip to Europe, and the false charges against her had been quietly dropped. "Good morning, beautiful." Dante appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee, and Sarah's heart still skipped a beat at the sight of him. "Good morning yourself." She sat up, accepting the coffee, and the lingering kiss he pressed to her lips. 3 weeks of living with Dante had taught her several things. First, that he was unfailingly protective without being possessive in the way Marcus had been. Second, that he had a wicked sense of humor hidden beneath his serious exterior. And third, that she was falling in love with him so hard and fast, it should have been terrifying. "I have something for you," Dante said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It's not my birthday." "Do I need a reason to give you gifts?" He handed her a small velvet box, and Sarah's breath caught. It was too small to be a ring, but still, the implications made her heart race. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant, a key. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, though she was confused by the symbolism. "It's the key to the penthouse," Dante said softly. "I want you to know that this is your home now, for as long as you want it to be." Sarah looked up at him, seeing vulnerability in his green eyes that he rarely showed. "Are you asking me to move in officially?" "I'm asking you to build a life with me, whatever that looks like." Sarah set the coffee aside and launched herself into his arms, knocking him backward onto the bed. "Yes," she said between kisses. "Yes to all of it." 6 months later, as Sarah stood on the balcony in a white dress, exchanging vows with the man who'd saved her in more ways than one, she couldn't help but think about that terrifying night when she jumped into a stranger's car. She'd been running from one kind of prison only to discover that sometimes the right person's captivity felt like freedom. "I love you, Mrs. Moretti," Dante whispered against her lips as their small gathering of friends and family applauded. "I love you too," Sarah whispered back. "Thank you for never letting me leave." Dante's smile was wicked and warm and full of promise. "Darling, I'm never letting you go." As they kissed under the Chicago stars, Sarah knew she'd finally found where she belonged. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was also the most necessary. And sometimes, when you were brave enough to jump, the right person would be there to catch you.